Hey guys, everything new under the sun. I'm going to provide my opinion on the ATACMS missiles, long-range missiles that Ukraine, apparently according to the Biden administration, is allowed to fire into Russia at this point. And I'm looking at news not only from a U.S. point of view, but also a Russian point of view. Some would say even a Russian propagandist point of view from RT News. But interesting to see what they're saying, what they're trying to tell the world. So this is a look at and an image, showing how far these missiles go. Not quite as far as Moscow, which you can see in the top of that image. You might not be able to see, but is the top right of that image. But they do go significantly farther, and it is an escalation to be sure. Now, this is a zero hedge. Ukraine's ATACMS strike on Russia comes after Putin lowers the threshold for nukes. So Putin has changed the doctrine again. So back in the day in the Cold War, a Russian nuclear doctrine was more straightforward and clear about when they would use nukes. It was meant to be defensive. So if nukes started flying against Russia, Russia would use them. Or if there was a significant incursion on Russia, they might be able to use them. But with the guerrilla warfare, the way that war is being waged now, where NATO is involved, but NATO's not involved, and it's not military folks on the ground anymore that tell you it's war. It's covert operations, sabotage, guerrilla warfare going on. The way that war is performed now is completely changed, 100% changed. With the use of drones and high technology and obscurity of who launched it and who's at the controls and these sorts of things, it's hard for nations to know exactly who is controlling these things. So you don't want to launch a nuclear strike if indeed it wasn't the nation that you thought it was hitting you. Now we all know who's in control, who's providing the funds for this sort of stuff, but regardless, the state of warfare is changing, and so the nuclear doctrine needs to be updated to manage this. Zero hedge again. This is Lavrov here. Lavrov warns the world is escalating conflict. So Biden, oddly, after the elections, is now hugely escalating this. And instead of putting it on pause and deciding, letting the next administration decide how they're going to, what they're going to do here, and Trump is going to come in and say, we probably shouldn't be sending that much money to Ukraine. Biden seems to be escalating it by green lighting the use of longer range weapons, which of course is an absolute poke in the eye of the Russian bear. And so many red lines have been crossed. I'll agree with a Canadian prepper there that, it's amazing. Putin is very patient. As much as you hate him or like him, whatever the case may be, he is very, very patient. He is playing the waiting game. It's a game of chess for Russia, as others have suggested. This is Alex Jones, but he posted a video about General Flynn. And General Flynn is suggesting that this is the fuse, and the fuse is lit for World War III. General Flynn warns Biden's bombing of Russia has lit the fuse that will trigger World War III. So apparently General Flynn, I think, is going to have some part in the Trump administration, which is interesting. I don't know all the details of that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I heard that was the case. So what is RT saying about this? Is RT acknowledging this? Do they know what's happening? And is Russia's nuclear doctrine actually being changed? Well, go right to the horse's mouth here, and you can see it in big red text here. Again, some see this as Russian propaganda, whatever. It's a Russia-controlled news agency. Basic principles of state policy of Russian Federation on nuclear deterrence. And it goes over the key points. But look at some of the headlines here. Kiev has permission to launch. Let me just slide that over. Kiev has permission to launch long-range strikes, says Zelensky. Biden committing unconstitutional act of war. U.S. According to a U.S. lawmaker. Most Ukrainians now want a quick end to the war. Interesting that the poll is coming out now as Trump is getting in. Now the Ukrainians want peace, right? Kremlin indicates that the Ukraine war will last a little longer. I'm just going down the right-hand side. Experts react to Russia's new nuclear doctrine. And it goes on, speaking about things. So, yes, the nuclear doctrine has changed. Yes, Russia is well aware of it, and they have changed the doctrine accordingly. And it's actually interesting. If you go to RT.com, you can read the changes and about the basic principle here. The Russian Federation considers nuclear weapons as a means of deterrence, their use being an extreme and compelled measure, and takes all necessary efforts to reduce nuclear threat. It's at number 4, an aggression of any state from a military coalition, bloc alliance, so NATO, against Russian Federations and or its allies will be regarded as an aggression of the coalition, NATO, as a whole. An aggression against the Russian Federation and its or its allies, maybe Iran, maybe China, of any non-nuclear state with the participation and support of a nuclear state, United States, for example. Ukraine, rather, a non-nuclear state, with the support of a nation that is a nuclear state, United States, will be regarded as their joint attack, i.e. NATO. Russian Federation reserves the right to use nuclear weapons in response to the use of nuclear arms and or other weapons of mass destruction against itself or its allies, as well as in the event of an aggression against the Russian Federation and or Belarus, it says, as constituents of the Union state using conventional arms if such an aggression creates a critical threat for their sovereignty. So even if conventional weapons are used, Russia now is basically formalizing it that they can use nuclear weapons against a conventional strike. And this is what the United States, this is what NATO is doing. They're flying under the radar, not poking the bear as much to go to nuclear war, but just kind of staying under the radar, staying just bit by bit, ever increasing weaponry and defense, basically to see what Russia's red line truly is. And they're pushing Putin right to the brink of war. The decision to use nuclear weapons is taken by the president of the Russian Federation, i.e. Vladimir Putin. So that's interesting that he has the final say. He has the final word, which, the commander-in-chief, Biden is the commander-in-chief of the U.S. military right now. So he would have the say, again, or the last word. And likewise, Trump, when he gets in, he would have the last word on that as well. So an interesting change. And you have to say that the red line, whatever truly the red line is for Russia, you have to say that we're getting ever closer to it. And I believe, how does this wrap into end-time Bible prophecy and what the Bible says about the last days? Well, it says that there's a world leader coming in, AntiChrist, and he implements a mark of the beast system, a new world economic system, and that there's a false prophet that comes along with them, and that the Jews are allowed to have sacrifices again, because it says that the Antichrist will cause the sacrifices to cease or to stop. That means he must have allowed it, or they must have been able to rebuild their temple, the third temple, to reinstate those sacrifices. So it speaks of a world, the Bible does, in the yet future. Temple isn't built yet, sacrifices are not happening yet. A world yet future where these things are occurring. And you're only going to get the rebuilding of the third temple after a great war, I believe, where there's a great peace effort. We get to the brink of World War III, maybe the use of some nuclear weapons, and the whole world says enough, and then they all agree to have a world leader come in and force peace on the world for a period of 7 years, by the way, and allow the Jews to rebuild the third temple and sacrifices. And this is what kicks off, the 7-year period, where in the middle of it, at the 3.5-year mark, the Antichrist sits on the throne in the third temple, declaring himself to be God and causing the abomination of desolation. That is the point, that midpoint, that 3.5 years into the 7-year period, where the rapture of the church happens. Those faithful are taken out, and then the Great Tribulation, which is the wrath of God, the last 3.5 years. And if you're not saved, including the Jews, you're going to be going through that. And it's going to be a a terrible, terrible time of persecution and martyrdom by those who stand in faith in God after that point, who make a decision after that point and stand in faith. It will be a terrible time, and they will likely lose their lives. So this is what this means. I believe it's an interesting state of affairs, and I think we need to get to World War III before the world comes together, before we're forced together to accept the one world government, a one world economic system. Right now, we're all very individual in our countries, and the U.S. just voted in a populist leader who is going to make America great again, who is not going to push a world agenda. Same with Canada, as we're looking toward the next election, probably in 2025. We are likely to elect a leader who is not interested in a world government or World Economic Forum leaders. He has stated that none of his cabinet ministers will be WEF members, World Economic Forum members, and so it's going to take World War III. It's going to take the brink of World War III and nuclear weapons used really to convince all of us in a state of panic to where the governments can force us on lockdown and martial law and force us into allowing a world government to take control. So how far is it off, being that the world is voting in these populist governments that are more looking out for themselves and their countries than they are for a world government, rather? Well, it could push us off a little bit. We're in the year 2024, heading into 2025. I think 2028 is a very, very fascinating year, possibly the midpoint of the 7-year period, somewhere in there. And that could mean that 7-year period could start at any time if you work backwards from that. And so it would take a big event to move us all in the direction of a world government and give up our sovereignty, give up our sovereign nation, our sovereign currencies, and give them over to a global government, which they tried to do with our health, by the way, during COVID. And it's going to take a massive, massive event, likely a World War III, really to bring the world to its knees before they will accept that world-leading person, political figure who will become the AntiChrist. So that's the timeline of the return of the Lord right there, folks. A massive event, a World War III event. Nuclear weapons are likely to be used, I believe. And I believe if you look through the prophetic scriptures as well, they seem to suggest, you can read into them, that they are speaking of a time in the after effects or during a time when nuclear weapons are used. So thanks you for watching. I'll leave it there. We'll see you in the next video. And by the way, I have videos about where nuclear weapons could be getting used in yet future events in the various prophecies from Zechariah right into Revelation. So you can check those if you want. Thanks for watching. I'll leave it there. We'll see you in the next video.